Oh, hey, it's Emily, and today I have a hopefully quick and not rambly video about why I personally don't give star ratings for the books that I'm reviewing. I do want to say, of course, however anyone wants to review the books that they're reviewing is great, and they can do it whatever way works for them. I watch so many people who star rate their books, and as long as that works for them, great. It's not going to affect whether or not I watch someone's content. It just doesn't work for me, and I kind of wanted to share some thoughts on why. If you happen to agree with some of these thoughts and think that star ratings don't necessarily work for you, let me know in the comments. If you love giving a star rating and that works for you, I would also love to hear that in the comments. Or maybe this kind of gives you some food for thought about rating books. Who knows? But I wanted to share why it doesn't necessarily work for me in particular. And I think what it boils down to, the essence of what it boils down to, is that it can be hard, dare I say nearly impossible, to find any sort of consistent way to quantify feelings about a book. And it can kind of cause some consternation to try to find a number that conveys as much as possible about how you feel about a book. But I also find that to be the least helpful aspect of any given review that I watch or read or whatever. And so for me, it very quickly became a matter of, if this is going to cause me consternation and isn't even a helpful aspect of what I look for in a review anyway, why am I doing this? And so I very quickly stopped star rating my books, because it just wasn't working for me. It was just, there was too much mental gymnastics to try to figure out a star rating, and it didn't even always feel right anyway. Anyway, so I'll get into a little bit more nuance, but that's essentially what it boils down to. So one main thing I think is that it can just be so different for so many people, and unless you have followed someone for a long time, or maybe they're very explicit and clear about what different star ratings might mean for them, it can be really hard to try to decipher what the number actually means for someone. It could mean, again, just so many different things. And this isn't a criticism of reviewers. It's just it's just really hard to find any sort of consistent way for a number to encompass complex feelings about a book, right? And so it can just become very hard. And unless I was very familiar with a reviewer and how they star rated books, that wasn't anything that helped me figure out whether that book might be something I want to read, or whether maybe a book that didn't seem like it would be for me, or hard to figure out who the audience for that book might be based on a star rating. And so it's kind of interesting to hear people talk about why the specific number they gave was the number that they went with. I mean, what does it mean to give a 3.25 versus a 3.5? Or, sometimes a reviewer might be vacillating between a 3.5 and a 4, and they just kind of think about it for a long time, and then just were like, I just gave up and just decided that 3.75 was close enough, which is fair. But it's just hard to try to figure out when it could mean so many different things. A 4-star could mean everything from, this was completely great and didn't do anything wrong for me. It had so many things I love, it just didn't give a 5-star feeling, versus this was a 5-star book until this one type of twist that I don't like happened, and it dropped it down to a 4 or even a 3. 3 can mean so many different things to people. It could mean there were an equal number of things I liked and didn't like about this book, or it could be, this was perfectly fine, this was perfectly great, nothing wrong. Average, good book. And that's, again, fair. However, whatever that means to someone, it just, because there are so many different ways you can take it, unless you're super familiar with a particular way someone reviews, for me, it doesn't add anything, Another thing that makes it hard is that you're comparing across different genres, across different subgenres, across different age ranges. Like, how are you supposed to compare, a complex high fantasy, or the purpose of a book behind the writing of a book, the purposes behind them could be very different things. And, someone might give a really good rating because they say, well, the purpose of the book seemed to be XYZ, and the book accomplished those things. 5 stars, right? Which, again, fair. Or someone could say, yes, the book accomplished what it wanted to, but my enjoyment just wasn't a 5-star level. And so, so because there's so many different genres, subgenres, age ranges, purposes behind writing a book, if you're comparing a complex high political fantasy to, I don't know, a contemporary romance to a middle grade sci-fi, where the audience is going to be completely different, or the intended, notional audience behind who might be reading that when an author is writing it can be completely different. And so how do you compare those things in a way that can be consistent? Or, comparing between an author, it's so easy if you're trying to find a number, it's so easy to compare, even within a genre, or even between genres. It's just so easy to try to compare in order to try to find some way to figure out a number. Or you could be comparing it to an author's other books. And so if you're saying, okay, this isn't my favorite book from the author, this is probably my 3rd favorite book from them, but does that mean that the star rating for that has to be the 3rd highest? Or can all 3 of those books, someone might feel weird, and this is something that I've seen in so many reviews of, people feeling weird about maybe the top 3 books that they have from an author being the same rating, but they do very distinctly feel that one is their favorite, this one is their 2nd favorite, and this one is their 3rd favorite. And that can sometimes feel weird to people when they're thinking about it and say, well, do I need to lower some of the other ratings because these were definitely ones that I liked more? Or, and it can just kind of become a game that you're trying to squish books in the right order when, again, there's so many factors to consider. Another thing that people can sometimes, or reviewers can sometimes do, is a star rating can sometimes become, not really a crutch, but can sometimes be there as a way to kind of give their feelings when sometimes words aren't doing enough. So sometimes it can also be hard to put to words what you're feeling about a book, right? And again, that's what I mean. I'm not trying to criticize reviewers. It can sometimes be hard to put it to words as well. And so sometimes that number can be used as a way to try their best to fill in that gap of, I don't necessarily have the words, but this is at least some way I can try to convey them. Or sometimes it can kind of seem like that's trying to justify the number is the primary focus of a review, instead of focusing on, okay, here's what worked for me and didn't work for me. If you like these types of books, or if these are elements you look for in a book, then I feel like this book could be your cup of tea. Or, trying to use their review as a way to find the right audience for the book. Sometimes that can kind of be or feel less like the priority if they're spending a lot of time trying to justify the mental gymnastics of why they settled on a particular number. You know what I mean? And so to me, the helpful part is, or, sometimes someone can say, I had all these different feelings and, I ultimately just settled on this number because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that part is the helpful part, that the explaining of why this element worked for you, this element didn't, and kind of going through different aspects of the book and why one worked, one didn't, but also taking the time to think about, okay, if you like these elements in a book, this could be a book that you will absolutely love. And so anyway, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, the helpful part is that additional thought, not necessarily trying to tie that, at least for me when I'm listening to a review, reading one, that's the helpful part. It's not necessarily trying to tie it to a specific number. I could hear two different reviews of someone giving it a 5-star and someone giving it a 1-star. And again, this is something that can kind of come out of people reading 1-star and 5-star reviews of their favorite or least favorite books. You know, sometimes you can have a 5 and 1-star review of the same book, and either of those can convince you to read the book if they're done in a particular way, right? So someone's taste could be completely different to yours, and they say, I don't like XYZ elements in the books that I read, but I didn't realize this book had those elements, and so it wasn't a book that I enjoyed. And, you know, maybe they give it 1 or 2 stars, but maybe that 1-star review can convince you to read it if those are something you like to read in your books. And so it's kind of funny to watch those videos, because it kind of just convinces me again that the actual number isn't what necessarily, for me, convinces me to read a book or not. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I hope this made some sense, or kind of give some context for why you're not going to see star ratings in my videos. But yeah, I will leave my Instagram link down below, as well as more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. Subscribe for more bookish content. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.